Hey everybody, this is Dane with Everything Board Games. Today we're going to be taking a look at Hero Master, an epic game of epic fails. This is by Jamie Noble Fryer of The Noble Artist. This is his first game design, but you might recognize his name as he's been the artist on a few different games like Smiths of Winterforge and Perdition's Mouth. So let's go ahead and open it up and see what's inside. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at what's in the box. Now I must state right off the bat that all these components are prototype and not final, and let's first take a look at the player boards. Player boards are broken up into a few different slots for cards that will be played here, and then a health track down here at the bottom, and then how many cards you can play or have in your hand at the beginning of each phase, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. This is the game board right here. It has slots for monsters, for locations, current encounters, and any ambushing creatures. Got several decks here. The first deck that we'll take a look at is the treasure deck. These are cards that will get added to your deck as you play throughout the game through either defeating monsters or through other special cards. Got location cards. Location cards dictate how many enemies come out, how much treasure is being fought for, how much gold, and then any special abilities that come with it. Here we have our critical fail cards. After you roll a critical fail, you'll draw one of these and resolve it. Here we have our creature deck. There's all sorts of creatures here, from puny little mice to, backwards cards, to fire imps, to boss cards, and then legendary creatures. They each have defense, basic defense, and then you've got all the different kinds of attacks, and then their actual amount of damage that they'll do when they hit you, how many treasure cards you get, and then any special effects right there. Final two decks are all based around class and race. So every player is going to receive a class card and a race card. And with that, they're going to take an accompanying class and race deck from this. So you can see we've got rogue, we've got elf, we've got wizard, we've got priest and human, and we'll talk about these a little bit more as well. The game also comes with reference cards, money tokens, a couple D20s, a first player token, and then tokens to track your health, the number of cards, and then a couple extra tokens for a couple special cards. Let's go ahead and get this set up and show you how the game plays. Okay, so here we have a setup for a two-player game. Each player has their player board. They put their number of cards they can have in their hand at 6 and set their health to 10. As mentioned before, each player is going to get one race card and one class card, and they're going to take the corresponding decks for each of those. You can see here we've got the halfling rogue. Once you take out the decks, you go ahead and pull the weapon and armor cards from the class cards. So we've done that. He's got a dagger, a clobber stick, and greased leather. We take the remaining cards and we go ahead and shuffle those up, and this becomes this player's deck of cards to go from. Same thing over here. We've got an elf barbarian. Barbarian being one of my favorite classes to be. He just has some really cool stuff. And he's got his armor and his two weapons as well. And of course we'll go ahead and shuffle up this deck as well. Now, each player also will receive 3 coins, and then the player with the first player token will go ahead and choose a location. To do that, they'll take the top 2 cards. I forgot to mention that as we set up the location deck, we take, depending on the number of players, you take a certain amount of cards, shuffle in the dragon's den in the bottom part of those, and then put the other shuffled location cards on top of that. So that's how you create your location decks. So first thing is we're going to take a look at our locations to choose from. So here we've got the molten Cavern and the Slippery Chasm. You can see up here, both of them are going to have 2 monsters come. This Molten Cavern provides you with 3 treasures and 11 gold, while the Slippery Chasm only offers 1 treasure and 5 gold. There's a couple starting player bonuses down here. This one says that you may forge a randomly drawn treasure by using 2 gold. So I could go ahead as the starting player, spend 2 gold and get myself a new treasure. That would be added to my deck of cards here. Now over at the Slippery Chasm, we can drop 3 gold into the loot unless you have an agility hero card. So this is mandatory, you've got to do this. And I'll explain where the loot pile is. And then there's some ongoing effects here. This one says that any critical fail that gets rolled, any treasure cards applied to the attack, including bungle cards, are placed in the treasure discard pile. So you got to get rid of those. This one says that when a player loses a gold to the loot pile equal to their reverse position in gold. So this is when they're playing a card. And then this is an ongoing effect that weapons with fire damage do not exhaust here, and we'll talk about exhausting here. So what the first player is going to do is he's going to choose between which place he wants to go, and then he's going to go ahead and place that face up in the location, and then the remaining location gets discarded out of the game. So we'll go ahead and toss that over there. Okay, once the location is drawn, we need to go ahead and draw monsters equal to the number that was indicated. Remember, that was 2. And that will be drawn straight from the regular monster deck. Now, as you remember, when we were talking about the different monsters, I told you that there's bosses and legendary monsters. Now, typically, most locations only have regular monsters. If there was a boss in this location, there would be a warning sign right here. And then you would actually add the boss to the monster cards, and those can be taken out of this deck here, and then of course the legendary creature is there as well. So when we're setting up for this one, we're just going to go ahead and draw 2 monsters from our regular deck. We put the first one that we draw into the ambush position, and then we take the second one and we put it over here. I think it's the leftmost, it could be the rightmost, but leftmost position to get everything prepared. Now what this means, this ambush position down here, is if we get attacked, whoever's turn it is gets attacked and gets hit by the monster, the ambusher is automatically going to get a chance to hit you as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go into an example of gameplay. Other than that, everything, we need to get our treasures ready. Remember this spot said that we get 1 treasure card. That gets placed face up. We're going to just do it down here. We're going to kind of mess up our spot here. So everybody knows what treasures are available, and then we're also going to add the gold. That is for this level, and there was 5 gold available. So we're going to add 5 gold to the pot. This is the loot. So when any cards talk about the loot pile or the treasure pile, that's what that means. All right, so now we're set up for our first encounter, and the first player also gets to choose, in addition to the location, will also get to choose whether or not they want to go into the encounter or not. And if they decide they do, then they get to pick which creature that they are going to encounter first. Now, as we look at these creature cards, there's a few things we got to pay attention to. The first one over here is their defense. This is the number that you have to roll higher than or equal to in order to defeat this creature. In addition to that, you're going to have to defeat the creature in one of these 4 areas as well. There's basic attack, fire attack, ice attack, and I believe this is, I don't want to say magic attack. I'll look that up here in a second. Okay, and then finally over here is the damage that the creature is going to do to you. Down here we have how many gold that you will receive for defeating this creature, and how many treasures. Now this gold and this treasure comes out of the loot pile and the treasure pile that we have already set out. So you can see this one, if you defeat this bear, you're pretty much going to get all the treasure and loot from this location. Finally, we've got a special effect. This one happens to say that when this bear hits you, he's going to do the Maul effect. The Maul effect is going to allow him to re-roll his hit for an additional wound. If that wound goes through, then he does it another time. So this guy can hit you up to 3 times, which is not good, as you're going to go down 3 health every time. So our first player is going to decide out of these 2 cards which to go for first, knowing that the bear was in the ambush position and this frost sprite has a little bit better defense. We're going to go ahead and take on the bear. So we move the bear to the encounter position. We always need to remember the ongoing effects. This one says that if a critical fail happens, then we need to add some treasure, do some things. So we're not going to forget that. So now it's the first player's turn. They're going to go ahead and draw. Remember, they get 6 cards, so they're going to draw 6 cards from their deck. I didn't probably shuffle this. I'll give it one more shuffle here as I show an example round here. All right, so draw 6 cards. 6. Hope I can count good. Yep, I counted good. And now there's a couple things that this player can do. So looking at their hand, there's a couple different cards that they have. Let's take a look at this one first. This card is a Bunco card. You can read that down at the bottom here. This is a card that you're going to play on somebody else to thwart their attack. Okay. This one says that the critical hit, instead of being or a critical miss, instead of being a 1, is now a 7 or less, which makes it that much easier to get a critical miss. It is also going to take away from the basic attack and also the fire attack. And this also says that if you are the party leader, give it to another hero. So this one you might not want to play if you have the party hero token or the leader token. Let's look at the next type. The next type that you're going to have in your hand is an attack. There's going to be possibly a number up here. This is a modifier to your D20 roll when you're trying to do the hit. When you're trying to roll this 12 or higher, this is going to add 1 to your die roll. This is also going to give you a +1 on your basic attack. And then there might be other numbers along here. And then finally an extra defense value there possibly. And then of course some special power here is that you take the leader token. So on your turn, you're going to do one of 2 things. You're either going to play one of 3 things, I guess. You're going to play an attack into one of your attack slots, or you're going to play a bungle on top of one of your opponent's attack slots. But when you're very first doing your first play for a round is either got to be an attack, or you're going to pass for the round, meaning that you're not going to fight and try to compete for the monster and the treasures. So looking at our hands here, we're going to go ahead and make an attack. Now, we have a little bit of a problem. That Grizzly is really high on basic attacks and high on everything else. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use our Brave attack. It's going to give us a +4, no modifier on our D20 roll, but a +4 on our basic attack. Now, that's not enough to beat the Grizzly. The Grizzly was a 6 on its basic attack. However, we will probably add a weapon to this attack to help make it stronger, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. So, first player is going to play this into their attack spot, like that, and then it is the second player's turn. And they too are going to shuffle their cards a little bit better. And they're going to take a look at it. Now remember, on your first play, you are not able to play a bungle on another player, but you can decide that you're not going to join in on this attack. Now looking at this, our elf has a Mystic Dance attack, which allows a +1 to his D20 roll, and also a +3 on his fire attack. Now, if we remember, our grizzly here has a 3. So this Mystic Dance at a 3 is equal to or greater than the 3 on the bear. So he's going to be able to defeat it if he can roll higher than that 12 with that +1. So our elf barbarian decides he is going to Mystic Dance into this fight. Now we notice here there's this icon right here that shows, oh, sorry, focus, that when this card is played, you may discard an action card to refresh a hero card. Hero card are your race and your class cards here. When you use those actually get turned over and you can't use them again unless you use a card like this that refreshes them. So let's get into this fight with a Mystic Dance. All right, turn goes back to player 1. So as we're looking at our cards, now we have the option of either playing another attack, putting a bungle on our opponent, or passing. If we pass, we can't play any other cards and we have to wait until our opponents pass, at which time we're going to resolve each attack based on who has the leader token. So looking through my cards here, I'm looking at my opponent, and I can pretty much guess that he's going to try to defeat the bear with fire. So if we look at Untrustworthy here, we see that it ups the critical miss to 8, but it also does a -2 to fire attack, which is going to totally mess up our opponent. It also says that when we play this, the rogue may discard an attack card that they have laid. So if maybe we've laid something that our opponent is bungled and we want to find a way to get rid of it so that we don't have to go through with that attack and fail, we could go ahead and do that. But we're going to go ahead and play this bungle, Untrustworthy, on top of the Mystic Dance. And we do this just by placing it up here at the top. Okay, so now this +3 is actually just a +1. So now it's our opponent's turn. And they're not too happy that we did that. So they've got to figure out how are they going to attack and be successful. Well, we see here they've got a healing herb attack that gives them a +3 on, and I still haven't looked that up yet. Sorry, Jamie. I'll put a little note in there that says what it is. But it's got +3 on this attack, and then their weapon also has a +3, so that would be a 6, and the bear's currently sitting at a 4, so that would definitely be a win. So thinking this through, not only are they going to get that +3 and combine it with their weapon, but they're also going to add armor and add to their roll. So let's go ahead and do this, and it says once they play it, they can heal 2 wounds. Well, we don't have wounds yet, but we'll go ahead and play it anyway. All right, that's the end of their turn. And we go back to the start player. Now, one thing that players need to keep track of here is that these cards have to last the entire time you are in the slippery chasm. Okay, your hand does not reset until you move to a new location. So at this point, player 1's got to think, oh man, if I spend any more cards here, I might not be able to attack the Frost Sprite. So player 1 is going to say, okay, I'm going to pass. Okay, when player 1 passes, player 2 will then get a chance one more time, or as many times as they want, to go ahead and play a card. Now looking at their cards, they feel pretty good about their second attack, so they might look at bungling player 1's attack, and boy, they could really do it. In fact, they're going to be really tricky here. They're going to play Greater Race. Not only is it going to change the critical miss to a 6 or lower, but it's also going to take away 2 from our Halfling Rogue's basic attack. And when they play this card, they get to take the party leader token, which means once this laying down your actions is through, they will get to perform the first attack. So they're going to go ahead and bungle. It's kind of a dangerous play because that only leaves them with 3 cards, but they're going hopefully they're going to try to take out this bear and get all the treasure. So we already know player 1 passed. It comes back to player 2 again, and they say they pass. Now, I forgot that they took the first player token. Now, every player has officially passed, and we go ahead and move to the resolution phase. Player is going to take the 2 d20s in their hand, and they're going to roll both of them. The black die indicates the attack from the creature, and then the green die is the effect that comes from the player. Now, since this player's first, they are going to have to do their first attack based off of their first slot. And we already know that they're probably going to fail because they've got only a +3 and a -2. The Grizzly's a 3, so they're actually at 1. We look at the hero cards for any help, and there's nothing that can help us there, and none of our weapons can help us either. Yep, even if we used that one, it wouldn't help. So they're just going to go ahead and roll. Remember, they're trying to get above a 12, and they've got a +1. And they did it. They got a 15. Don't know if you can see that. It's probably not going to focus very well. Focus. There it is, 15. So they've succeeded. They actually got a 16, and the bear's a 12. But because they could not beat the bear's fire defense, it's actually unsuccessful. Now, the bear rolled a 1. So the bear does not hit this hero. And this hero then discards that attack. And any bungles played by their opponents goes over to their discard pile. So because they failed, the first player token now comes over to this player, who is going to run into the same problem. They have a +4, but a -2, and they need to get to 6 to hit the bear here. Looking through, we could add this weapon, which would give them a +2, so you're back at 4, and then you could actually add this weapon as well, but unfortunately, that only gets us to 5, and the bear, if we remember, has a regular defense of 6, so we're not quite there. All right. If I do play this weapon card, it does say that if I get a hit on the monster but it doesn't kill it, meaning I wasn't able to defeat it with that regular attack, that I can take a gold from the loot pile. That might be worth playing. However, player 1 really wants to save their cards and see if they can beat the Frost Sprite on the next turn. So they're just going to go ahead and roll. All right, they rolled a 17, so they definitely hit. But again, because they were not able to do the regular damage, and they didn't even apply any of the weapons on this attack because they knew they weren't going to be able to get it. They do not kill the bear, but the bear rolled an 11. Well, that is a hit because our rogue only has a defense of 8. So the rogue is going to take a hit equal to the bear's ferocity, which is 3. So he's going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3. And then, because the bear has the Maul attack, the bear gets to roll again. And the bear rolled a 6 this time. So that is not a hit, and we don't have to worry about taking any more life away. So this attack is done. This goes back to player 2. This goes back to player 1's discard pile. Because they failed with the attack, the first player token gets moved over here, and player 2 gets to resolve their second attack. Now remember, we get +1, we get the +3, and we are going to go ahead and add in our crumb, which gives us +3 to our magic attack. And it says down at the bottom, the special effect says that when a monster is killed, we get to refresh this weapon. So we're going to turn this sideways to indicate that we are using it this turn. And then we are going to roll and hope that we get higher than a 12. All right, so we rolled an 11, which is not higher than a 12. But Our healing herb gave us +1 on this attack, so we did get 12. So we have defeated the beast with our attack. So typically when you use a weapon, you turn it face down until you can refresh it, but because we were able to defeat the monster, we're going to go ahead and get this weapon back right away. Now, the monster does get to hit, and he rolled a 9. Well, we look at the Barbarian's armor here, his furry pants, and it's got an armor value of 8. Unfortunately, not better than a 9, so we're going to get hit for 3. And the monster has the Maul effect, so he is going to reroll. Oh, critical hit. Now, when a monster gets a critical hit, he gets double the damage. So it's going to go down 3 more and 3 more. Oh, our elf barbarian's not looking good here. Because now, if the grizzly bear hits again, he's done. So let's see what happens here. All right. You see we got a 1 on that. He does not take another hit, and the grizzly bear has been defeated. The hero will get 5 gold and 1 treasure, which will immediately go into not the deck, but the current hand that will actually be ready to use as the next monster comes up. All right. So once a monster's been defeated, again, we make sure we discard any of the attacks and bungles back to the respective players. And whoever has the first player token, again, gets to choose the monster that they are going to attack. Now, the defeated monster gets discarded. Now, here's the interesting thing. We know that from the setup of this dungeon that there was only 1 treasure and only 5 gold to be looted from here. When this happens, all right, I had to pause that really quick to check to see what happens. We've got an interesting situation here that I actually haven't had happen in any of my playthroughs yet. But remember, we only had 1 treasure and 5 gold, and that bear that we defeated gave us 1 treasure and 5 gold. Well, we've got another creature here that's going to give us 2 gold and 2 treasure. However, we have none left in our treasure pile or loot pile. So this location has been stripped, and I am assuming, and I will double check on this and leave a note down below, but I'm assuming that this encounter is now over. So we would go ahead and discard this one back into that deck, and then this location is finished. Now, one thing that we did not encounter was a creature that has this power right here, down at the bottom. It's Ambusher. No matter where this creature is, if the creature that you're encountering does a hit on you, say the Frost Sprite hits you, this creature would automatically, because of that ability, be able to get a hit on you. Now, after this creature is defeated and there's an ambusher somewhere up here, he automatically will come down here so that everybody's a little bit more aware of that ambusher being there. Okay, so now that a location is done, a couple things happen. Anybody who had weapons that were used can now refresh them. Hero cards do not get refreshed. They are 1 use only unless you've got a special power or treasure that will bring them back. Also at this time, the first player will go ahead and draw 2 new location cards. Choose the one of their choice, place it in the location, discard the other, set up our player board or our main board again with the monsters, and draw back up to their hand limit, each player being able to go to 6, and then they would start a new round. And this continues until the Dragon's Lair is found. Once the Dragon's Lair is found, and remember it's down at the bottom of the deck, Dragon's Den, sorry, not Dragon's Lair. Once this is found, this will be the last encounter, and once this encounter is done, The players will add up all their gold, and the player with the most gold wins. All right, that's how you play Hero Master, an epic game of epic fails. Let's go ahead and hear what I thought about it. All right, so that is Hero Master, an epic game of epic fails. So what did I think about it? This game is a very light-hearted game, but don't let it fool you. There is a lot of depth, and I don't want to say strategy, but there is strategy. It's more tactical than it is strategic. But there is strategy as to when you play your cards, your attacks or your bungles, deciding how many cards to hold back so that you have ready for the next encounter, and so on. So there's a lot of thought that can go into it. Not so much that it bogs down play, though. The play goes pretty quick. Turns are really easy. I mean, you're just picking a card from your hand and you're either putting it in as an action, or you're putting it over as a bungle, or you're passing. So really, each player's turn is really quick. The encounters are quick to resolve, straightforward. There is some luck with the dice rolling, which will turn off some people, but I think for the most part, it really plays to kind of the flavor of the game, being a D&D RPG style game. People that have played those games in the past are really going to find it, familiar, and they're also going to find it very funny. The fact that your critical fail rolls can be, as high as 8 or 9, and you're getting these critical fails is just great. You're rolling that dice hoping that you can beat, higher than a 16 on your roll, and when you do, you're excited. If your opponent does it, you're upset. So there's a lot of good with that dice rolling that I really enjoyed. Each of the cards, not only do they have the stats that we pointed out before in the special actions, but they also have flavor text. And Jamie's a pretty funny guy. You probably don't know this about him, but he also does greeting cards. He's run a couple Kickstarters for those, and they're very humorous as well. All the flavor text, very thematic, very, very funny. Again, gameplay is very solid. It plays very well with 3 or 4 players. 2 players is a little bit, I don't know how to explain this. It's a little bit take that-ish. There's a lot of take that in this game, and everybody's aware of that because like I said, you're placing bungles on people and trying to mess up their attacks, and so there's a lot of that. But when it's just 2 players, I mean, you're just railing on each other the whole time. And so it seemed like, for me, I like the higher player count, as it just made for a funner game, as you could kind of spread around the pain a little bit. I love that there's so many location cards, and each location just offers a huge variety of different monster counts, different treasure counts, different effects as you're at the different locations. Just great variety there. Again, with the monsters, having the basic monsters and then the boss monsters adds a lot to it as well. Jamie, probably goes without having to mention this, but he did all the artwork himself. It's got a great feel to it. Again, because it's such a light-hearted game, the artwork really goes well with that. He's done a great job on all the layout and everything. Everything's super clear. I've actually been working a bit with him on this game as far as play testing it and whatnot with him for, I don't even know, 6, 10, 12 months, something like that. And so I've seen kind of the evolution of all this, and he's really streamlined it so it's very easy to figure out as you're going through everything. One thing that we didn't get to were these cards. And I'm trying to remember, these are protest cards. And what a protest card does is, if you're the player at the end of a location and you've got the least amount of gold in your hand, then you can take one of these protest cards and add it to your hand for the next round. It doesn't go against your hand limit, and it gives you some kind of powerful effects to help get you caught up to the other players. It's a one use only, so once you use it, it goes back into the protest deck. I think I've covered everything. This game, like I mentioned, is just a really lighthearted, fast-paced, fun game. Hey everybody, sorry about that. My camera ran out of power. I just wanted to wrap up by saying that Hero Master, an epic game of epic fails, is a wonderful game, very fun, and definitely worth adding to your collection. I would say anybody who loves a good RPG, loves a lighter side of things, loves kind of a deck builder meets take that style game, would really enjoy this one, and definitely worth picking up. If you like what you saw here, take a look at the Kickstarter campaign that should be coming out soon. I'll link it in the description below, and we'll catch you soon.